Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, Tacitus Today, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the concept of how much collateral damage any society is prepared to accept or even to foster or to encourage or to enable before it descends into really a trajectory of becoming a failed state. Now, just to sort of give you some idea as to if you look at approximately 200 sort of nation states in the world, half of them many would argue would fall into the category of a failed state. There's quite a substantial block of, say, 50 to 60, you'd say, are in an interim stage. They could still go either way. The jury's out on this. And then there's maybe 22 or 3 that you'd say are in approximate first world sort of status. This is per capita GDP, by the way. Then there's a block that's sort of in the upper end of the middle bracket that things are looking pretty good. But in reality, there's probably only 20% of the world's countries let's just generically say they're rich. And needless to say, that's where, if you look at where are all the migrants wanting to go, not that there aren't vast United Nations logistical structures to help them do it, but where do all the poor peasant populations of the world want to go? They want to go to the white countries. They want to live among white people, those evil fascist Nazis, Nazi racists. But all these brown and black people want to go and live there. So let's have a look at the concept of collateral damage. This was brought home to me by just recently a former work colleague. He's had a stroke. He's an invalid. I don't think he'll ever recover. In fact, I'll be surprised if he's still alive in a year or two. But he and I were sort of colleagues at the same time. He was a bit smarter than me and hardworking, and if you like, he's the model citizen. Worked hard, studied hard at school, did well at college, got a good job, worked very hard, very sober of habit, didn't do drugs or get drunk or so, very, very sober of habit and didn't sort of gamble. And, the model citizen gets married, has the children and so on. Now, his choice of wife sort of surprised me a little bit because he was sort of verging on the bookish intellectual, and he was athletically quite capable. So he wasn't just like the nerdy guy or something. But he and I had to work sort of fairly closely together on a number of things. I quite admired him actually, but he married this, like, she was a swimsuit model, and adorned the pages of the magazines, and I was a little bit surprised because she was a bit stupid, but anyway, she looked hot, I suppose. But almost inevitably, in my view, they got divorced. Now, she owned nothing when they got married. She didn't even barely own the shirt on her back. So. Or when they got together. So all the money, all the affluence, all the lifestyle, everything was provided by him and his hard work and his income. And, she contributed nothing. And was also spendthrift and lazy to boot, I thought. But anyway, so they get divorced, and the view of the divorce court, this is across the Western world, is that the outcome must be, this equal outcomes thing, the outcome must be equal. Now, this is where the problem starts, in my view. Now, if she's being rewarded, the ex-wife, if she's being rewarded beyond what would have been a reasonable trajectory for her anyway, then that's an issue. Like say she was the world's leading rocket scientist and gave up that career, promising career on huge bucks, gave it up to have children and keep house, then there's a justification for an equal outcome thing, because she sacrificed a great deal. But she's actually sacrificed nothing. She almost had a casual, occasional income and was a nobody, and yet she's you know, good looking or not, but she ended up being lucky with a guy whose career sort of really took off not long after they got together. So the courts decide, well, she has to get an outcome equal to his. So whatever money he made, you know, if he made $1 million a year, that means she made $1 million a year. So whatever income he made, her income was equal to that. Now that's an absurd proposition. In the case where it may be a reasonable proposition, fine, but it's not. It's purely ideological, equal outcome creating. So and then she's richly compensated for the children. So she ends up getting, you know, after legal fees and everything, paid about 80% of his estate. Now he's worth quite a bit. Again, he's worked very hard, very careful with his money, and quite thrifty. So she gets about 80%. It blows most of it, by the way. But anyway, she gets the 80%. Because he's lost so much, he engages in some pretty risky investments that he knew were risky. I remember sitting down talking to him about it and saying, "Gee, where's that pretty risky?" But the payoffs would have been huge if the ship had come in. He ended up losing most of that. So here's a guy who's worth, you know, $6 million, is suddenly now worth, you know, not very much at all, and so he parked some money with his brother. And you often hear this, by the way. This is not an isolated case. Brothers ripping each other, family members. You know, this case, a brother ripping each other off. But he parked some money with his brother, an investment that he had, and in order to keep it sort of out of her reach. Then, when things have died down, he asks for that money back, and the brother says, "No, screw you, it's mine now. You know, you're not having a penny of it." And so, you know, he's lost that as well. Now he because they hit him up for so much alimony and you know, child support, backdated it, fined him, and, you know, almost wasn't worth his while working, which just happens to quite a few men, by the way. He you know, he sort of lived, if you like, in the underground economy there. Then the child support and alimony people said, look, you know, we're not going to bother you anymore. You go back to work. We're not going to touch you. You can you know, go back to living your life, and, you know, get on with the rest of your life. This sort of stuff that lawyers love to say. And so he starts another job. And bear in mind, he's lost a couple of years now of seniority and continuity. So he's kind of having to accept a bit of a junior position there. So he gets. And he's only there a week or two, and suddenly they're all over him again. So they lied to him. He's got it in writing. They're not going to bother him. But in fact, that was just a trap. It was a deliberate, premeditated entrapment act to get him to go back to work, just so they could jump all over him again. And so again, he walked away and went to the underground economy. Now, the combination and the stress of all these things, you know, by his health deteriorated. Anyway, now he's had this stroke and he's fucked. But that's the willful and deliberate destruction for ideological reasons. Now, these, you know, I've come across other guys who've been in not dissimilar, not the same necessarily, but not dissimilar sort of situations, and it staggers me that we've got the pursuit of an ideological outcome is so entrenched and just you know, over the top in feverish sort of pursuit, that we're prepared to accept this sort of collateral damage. Well, it's his fault. If he'd done what we wanted, this wouldn't have happened to him. But no, it wouldn't. Then you fuck off. Yeah. But this is the attitude. This sort of destruction is acceptable. Now I'm talking to somebody who's involved in like the wider leftist social work type sort of system, and saying, look, that, you know, this is terrible. You know, there are not one or two or three, but you know, thousands of men that are being put through this, and who are in not the similar position where they're dropping out. They're just becoming window cleaners and so on. You know, no society that wants to be wealthy can afford to directly and vigorously, aggressively enable the destruction of its most productive citizens. Now, it's a bit hard when you're talking to someone who's only ever worked in government, because they assume anyone who's got a high salary or makes a big income is getting that income through a system of patronage. You know, buddies looking out for them, giving them cozy gigs. Now, and now there's certainly those things go on, but in the public service and government, nobody makes big money unless it's through the patronage system. So they just can't comprehend the private sector, where there are people who are very bright, who work very hard and deliver good quality results for their business or their employers, that they are often well paid, and that's fine. But they don't see it that way. They just see that, well, that's just white privilege and oppressor class. They're the oppressors. They're the evil oppressors, and we are doing good things. We are doing good things by destroying those people. It's removing an oppressor from there, and so on. So this sort of idea of equal outcomes and getting the oppressor, getting the Nazi, means that these people are ideologically blinded, or blinded by ideology rather, that they're doing something good, when in fact that they're taking out thousands upon thousands of very productive, very capable, typically white men, from participating in the economy and adding value to it. So this, in my view, this is a willful destruction of an innocent citizen who's committed no crime at all. And again, who is a model citizen simply because the ideology, the fanatical, destructive, crazy, insane ideology demanded this, and that any collateral damage that occurs or is incurred as a result of pursuing the ideology, it's acceptable, because we're ideologically we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. Collateral damage, who cares? You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.